Hi, Sheetal. Thank you for joining us today. Um, and we're going to be talking to you about vitiligo and your journey with it. I know it's not a kind of comfortable conversation sometimes, and it can be a bit difficult. So again, I really appreciate you taking time out to talk about it with us today. So if you want to tell me a little bit about yourself, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, no problem. Hi. Thanks for the opportunity, first of all. Any chance I get to raise awareness on vitiligo, I'll grab with both hands. A little bit about myself. So I'm Sheetal. I'm from Birmingham. I've had vitiligo since I was 7 years old. By the age of about 21, 22, I actually lost 100% of pigmentation. So
Wow.
I've got no brown whatsoever. So in the world, there's about 1% of the population that has vitiligo. Of that 1%, only about 1% have universal vitiligo, which is what I have.
Right, okay. That's really interesting. I have to say I haven't heard of 100% vitiligo before previously.
Yeah,
So that's really interesting. Um, so can you share with us your early childhood and what that was like growing up in a kind of British South Asian community?
absolutely. Yeah. So initially, when we first noticed the little white patch, um, it didn't really register as anything worth worrying about for me. I was only 7 years old. Um,
Yeah.
I was just getting on with being a kid. And it was only sort of as the patches were increasing in numbers and the size, it was becoming more visible, uh, that I noticed other people seemed to have more of an issue with it. By the time I was about 10, uh, it seemed to be a big problem for everyone around me. And thus that problem started sort of internalizing within my family, within my own mind. And all of a sudden, vitiligo was an issue. It was like this taboo subject that needed to be sorted out. And that's basically what my childhood was right up until I was about 18. It was just spent listening to outsider opinions on, you know, what vitiligo is and that I shouldn't have it. It's the worst thing that could happen to me. To the point of, we have to find a way to cure it, so to speak. Even though now I know now that there's no cure for this condition. But back then, that's what it was about. It was about chasing a miracle.
Yeah, I can imagine. Must have been really difficult for you at the time. Can you share with us a little bit about your and your family's reaction to the diagnosis and what your kind of initial thoughts and feelings were around that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I was really young, so I didn't really understand it. I do remember a lot of doctor's appointments, and I do remember when they did say it's vitiligo, it was basically them saying, and that's it. There's nothing else. We can't help you. It is what it is. Um, Good luck. And literally that was it. And I think people forget that this was like early 80s. We didn't have access to the specialists that we have now, the research that's been done, the internet, all these things that get shared on social media, scientific facts. So when they said, this is it, you're on your own, we were literally on our own, blind leading the
Yeah,
blind, trying to find the support, trying to find more about it. And we were lost. We were basically lost. It was a very difficult period for my parents because growing up in the Asian community, not just vitiligo, just to be honest, any condition, any health condition anyone has, it's always seen as a really bad thing that needs to be hush hush and shouldn't be
yeah,
spoken about and, needs to be sorted one way or another. So this is what they got from the Asian community as well. It was constantly, oh my God, what's happened to your daughter? What's going to happen with her? What sort of life is she going to have? She's not going to have much of a life, literally, who's going to want to marry her? And this was while I was like 8, 9, 10. They were coming out with
goodness.
stuff like this. Like,
Yeah.
who's thinking of getting their kid married off at the age of
At
8?
at 8 years old.
Nobody,
Exactly.
nobody. And this just sort of exacerbated what wasn't a problem, a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a very difficult period because for me, initially, vitiligo wasn't an issue. I was just happy carrying on living my childhood. But when you hear those taunts and that negativity again and again and again, all of a sudden, you then do believe, like, okay, it is an issue.
Mm.
I haven't got a life. This is it. I've got no future. Um, yeah, it just that's how I saw my future being. So then all of a sudden for me as well, it was, but I need to get this sorted. I don't want to be like this anymore. I want my brown skin back. End of.
Yeah, that must have been, I mean, I can't imagine the journey for you from feeling quite confident inside of yourself, but then having to internalize, the stigma in the community and the beliefs that they had. And then the internalization of that then affecting you in a negative way. That must have been really hard to deal with at the time. Do you
Yeah.
still feel like you have to deal with those feelings, or have you kind of, been able to come to terms with them? And, how have you got to a point where you're comfortable with everything?
I I'm still working through it. It was internalized for years, literally years. So when I lost all my pigmentation around the same time is when I met my now husband, got married, moved to a different city, and it's almost like I had this new identity. Nobody knew who I
Right.
was. Nobody knew my background. Nobody knew I was Indian.
Hmm.
I was just this white-skinned person. Everyone assumed I was English. And it was almost nice and a relief not having to talk about what, for me, at that point then, was made out to be such a shameful condition. So from the age of about 22, or, until I was about 36, 37, I, I lied about basically who I was. If you knew I was Indian, fair enough, you knew. If you didn't, well, I wasn't going to correct you. And that was
Right.
that. I just went along with what people said. If somebody, said to me, oh, where's your name from? Because, they've obviously seen a white person. So they're curious why I've got the name Sheetal. And I just lie. I just say, oh, my parents wanted something different, or they went through a bit of a hippie phase. I wanted an Indian name. Just shut down the conversation. I didn't want to talk about something that was such a painful past. Um,
Yeah.
so having, you know, kept that inside for so long, keeping those feelings suppressed, keeping that shame suppressed, where there was nothing to be ashamed of. It's, I'm still going through that healing process. I'm still learning to love my skin as it is now. Understand that everybody else was actually wrong. It's not me.
Not
It's
you.
not me,
Yeah.
it's them. But the more I'm talking about it now, the more I'm accepting it, the more I'm being okay with where I am now. But, you know, it's not even been 10 years since I came out, so to speak.
Hmm.
So I'm getting there. I'm a lot better than I was. If you'd asked me these same questions 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I would have fallen apart. I wouldn't have been able to string a sentence together trying to explain what I went through as a kid. But now, yeah.
I have to say, I think it is really genuinely brave and courageous of you to be able to take up a platform like Instagram and use it to promote this and kind of help other people that are going through the same thing,
Yeah.
because it is something that is obviously not your fault, and it's something that you are going through, something that is almost happening to you.
Yeah.
So the help and support is needed, basically.
Absolutely. And
Um,
that's my main aim when I am speaking about it and it is still difficult for me, but I don't want others to have to go through what I went through. I'm my mission, working with like a charity like the Vitiligo Society and other people, the community that I've met, through social media is, you know, this is normal for us. It's It's
Yeah.
not a taboo subject. It's not something to be ashamed of. You know, it is what it is. It's not contagious. It's not something to, stay away from somebody for. It's not something to whisper behind their backs about or make comments where you think they can't hear, but they can. If you've got questions, ask me. I will always answer, to raise awareness, to educate. But yeah, that's why I speak up so much now.
No, that's like I said, I find that very kind of brave of you. So I just want to touch on some of the things that you said. How do you feel like the complete loss of your color in your skin has affected your identity, and the person that you are?
Um, it's been in sort of two phases. Initially, I actually felt like I'd lost my whole Indian identity, my cultural identity, um, because I'd made like a new identity for myself, for my own, what I thought then was sanity. And it was, I'm getting that back. I'm clawing that back now, though. It's, I still do miss being brown. It's, the color of your skin is something to celebrate. When you're getting dressed up and you go to family functions and you go to the temple and all that. I look around and, I still know I stick out like a sore thumb. I'm there dressed in these Indian outfits. And even now, people who don't know me and know I'm Indian, I still hear, what they think is a compliment. And they don't mean it with any malicious intent, but they'll be like, oh, look at that white lady over there. She's dressed herself so well. And you'd never look at even like, say, a brown young girl and say, oh, wow, she's put that sari on well. You wouldn't say that.
No, you wouldn't.
So
No.
I know they mean it as a compliment, but it's irritating.
Yeah.
And sometimes I speak out, and sometimes other people speak out for me as well, which is lovely. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so and I'm finding the more I'm speaking out, the more people learn to know me. I'm getting my identity back. I'm getting my Indian identity back. The Sheetal that I was.
I can see that. I can see that, especially with other people speaking out for you, kind of helps you in that type
Yeah,
of environment, and makes it less of a taboo thing as well, because it's like it's open, and it's okay to speak about that, and it's okay
yeah,
to be who you are.
absolutely.
Do you, do you feel like apart from people that would kind of speak out and um, encourage you to do as well, I assume, is there much else that's kind of helped you on your journey, to feel more comfortable with the thing? What kind of influences have kind of made you want to speak out about it and accept who
Yeah.
you are, rather than kind of keeping it quiet, I suppose?
So the first sort of influence, so to speak, was when I watched this documentary on BBC One years ago, about nearly 10-ish years ago. And it was the BBC following a group of people who have vitiligo, to show that the impact it has on them mentally, as a person, how other people react to them and all that. And when I initially watched it on TV, like fear gripped me, because it felt like it was me on display, and I didn't want
Right.
people to know that I had those patches and that's what I looked like, and that's what people used to say to me. And then I watched it again on iPlayer, and I thought, why am I being like this? Why am I being so ashamed of something that I shouldn't be? And that's what led to me first sharing about my vitiligo journey, albeit very briefly on
Hmm.
social media, but that was the initial one. But other than that, it's social media. I know it has its downfalls, social media, but for me, it's been an absolute godsend. It's where I first discovered all these vitiligo groups. Living Dappled being one of them, Erica Page, who's based in America, but she created the group and it was getting global reach. I joined the group. She used to hold little like sort of online chats just for women with vitiligo to talk about our journeys, and all of a sudden I didn't feel alone. And that, I think that was the issue, was prior to social media, I hardly came across somebody who had vitiligo, or if they did, that wanted to talk about it openly. I never had that outlet, and social media has really given me that. And it's been so cathartic being able to have that. That's what's really given me the confidence, and the outlet to let my emotions out and know that I'm not alone, that people understand, somebody actually understands what I've been through, what I'm going through still. So that's definitely been probably my biggest voice, my biggest chance to have a voice.
It feels like that was like quite a turning point for you
Yeah,
in the journey. What kind of
definitely.
what kind of questions do you, if you don't mind sharing, do
Yeah.
you kind of ask yourself when it came to the whole self-inquiry and trying to understand why you felt the way you felt? What were some of the questions that you had to ask yourself?
Ask myself.
Yeah.
Um, that's, I don't really know. I mean, it, every time I wanted to talk about it, I just felt shame. I felt shame and fear. And I
Right.
think it's just because of all the negativity that I was surrounded by. But I
Yeah.
mean, one of the online group chats I had during this Living Dappled group, um, so many of the women were talking about their vitiligo journey, and they were talking about when they've had it from childhood, all about like the support they had from community and, like, you know, extended family and all that. And I was the only one that didn't have that. So then all of a sudden I'm asking myself, why is the Asian community like this? You know, why do they have to make everything such an issue when it comes to health? You know, it doesn't matter what it is. It's always, oh my God, that's so bad. You know, don't talk about
Mm.
that, hide that, fix that. Um, so that was then at the forefront of my mind of, I need to speak up. You know, we need to change our mindset in the Asian community. And if I can help to do that, I need to learn to speak up.
What were some of your experiences with the Asian community?
They were just, it's a tough community. You know, they want everything as perfection. You,
Mm.
it's everything, it's every part of your body, and it's mostly aimed at women as well. I'd say at
Yeah.
least 90% of it is aimed at women. You know, you can't be too dark, you can't be too fat. So having a condition that's so visible, I used to hear comments like, she'd be so pretty if she was one colour. There'd be comments where they'd actually taunt my parents with things like, it's got to be the karma from his past life, which is why she's like this.
Oh, that's
And
terrible.
it's, you know, who's going to marry her? Nobody's going to want to marry her now. She's never going to have a life. She's never going to be able to have children. What sort of life is she going to have? And it's not like they didn't say it in front of me. They said, you know, I used to hear this. They used to talk about me with these types of comments in front of me as though I wasn't there. I heard all of these. And 30, 40 years on, I can, if I'm still remembering these, they've had an impact on my life, you know.
Of course, yeah.
So I just, my mission is to educate the Asian community. It's not right to be like this. And
No.
I mean, I was talking to somebody else, Shraddha Agarwal. I don't know if you've met her,
Yeah,
heard
yeah.
of her. And, you know, she was asking, she talks a lot about, you know, the stigma around being dark skinned in the Asian community. And
Colorism,
she
yeah.
flipped around and she was asking me, so how is it for you? You're fair and you're Indian. And I said, all of a sudden, as soon as I lost all my pigmentation and I was one colour, the Indian community all of a sudden loved me. I'd get girls commenting with, oh, you're so lucky that you're Indian and you're so fair, you know. that's the best thing. And I'm trying to get the words out to say, do you realize what I've gone through? Do you realize what I'm still going through? This isn't the skin that I prayed for. This
It's
isn't
not
the skin
luck,
that I was
no.
born with. This isn't my identity. So it's amazing,
Yeah.
what's perceived as beauty, um, without any thought of the impact on that person.
That's exactly right. I mean, the social norms that we have, the beauty ideals that we have, and I mean, you hear a lot about Eurocentric beauty ideals and what it's like here in the West. But sometimes when you go, back to the East and you look at the beauty ideals there, they're actually no better and sometimes even
No,
worse.
not at
When you
all.
look at colorism and everything else, it's just there's
Yeah,
a lot of work to be done
so
in the
much.
community about so many topics. But hopefully, conversations like this will make a difference, and if we can
Yeah,
educate people more, we can see a shift and we can see a change in future generations, and we can help future generations that are having conditions like vitiligo and how it's affecting them.
yeah, yeah. And
So I
it's
mean,
nice because, you know, I have seen changes. Like, so I know a few people now who have developed vitiligo since like I've done my radio show, my TV show, etc.
mhm,
And I remember my mom, she was saying, oh, she knows somebody who, a friend who's got vitiligo. And she was, she was really encouraging her and motivating her to embrace it and speak up about it. She was talking about my experience so openly. And once upon a time that wouldn't have happened. And to see that change in that generation where they grew up with, oh, that's shameful, you can't do that, you can't say this, women shouldn't speak up. To see that change in her as well, it's just so heartwarming that, okay,
yeah,
it's working. It's, even if
yeah,
it's just one person, it makes it all worthwhile.
it is. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to see anyone embracing their own skin and embracing who they are,
Yeah.
and being fully confident in that. That is definitely amazing. Um, so, can I ask, through your experiences and everything that you've been through, how do you kind of use that to support and advocate, and kind of help other people going through the same thing?
So one of the things I do is I volunteer at the Vitiligo Society, and
Hmm.
that's an amazing charity. So many people reach out to that charity for help. But it's like they can't do enough for people. They need a lot more volunteers. So that's one of the ways I like to help. I use my social media platform now to raise awareness, spread messages, and every time I post something about vitiligo on there, the amount of DMs I get from people who also have vitiligo, who are struggling, and they just want an outlet, somebody to speak to that understands what they're going through. They want a bit of advice, pointing in the right direction. Um, it it's just nice to know that even if it's just one post that's reached out to 10 people and it's
Yeah.
helped them, you know, and that's so I do that as much as I can as well. We've got World Vitiligo Day coming up on June the 25th.
Okay.
Um,
Brilliant.
so you might see a few posts from me on that day as well. A lot of sharing. There'll be a lot of spamming from me going on that day
Yeah.
as
No,
well.
I'm happy to forward it and share it on as well. I think it's such an
Absolutely.
important
Thank
cause and
you.
something to help with. No, that's fine. Um, so looking back at your journey, what do you wish almost that you could say to your younger self when you were going through this, and maybe to any younger people that are listening to this, or anyone that has kind of visual differences? What kind of words, or what would you say?
Ignore the outside noise. Ignore that negativity. It is hard. It's so hard. But you decide what you want to do with your skin. You know, there's so many treatment options now. If you're not comfortable with how it is and you want to try the treatments, go for it. If you don't want to, don't let anybody push you down that path. The makeup as well, there's the cover-ups now. There's no shame in wanting to cover up your patches at all. If you're going to do it, go for it. There's so much more choice out there as well. But again, if not, wear your skin with pride and just ignore that outside negativity, block it all out, and I just wish when I was younger, when I was at that point in my head where my skin didn't bother me, I wish I had spoken out then and had the
Yeah.
confidence to encourage my parents to ignore those outside noises. Because I look back and I just think, if I'd done that, all of our journeys for me and my family would have been so much easier. It would have been so much smoother. It would have been so much different. But here I am now, and I'm turning it around. I'm using what people were telling me was a curse into a blessing.
Yeah. And you're doing a brilliant job, I have to say. So one last question for me, and I suppose it's what advice would you give to parents that have children that are going through this? How can they best support their child, and what can they do?
Yes. So I have said this before, but listen to your child, speak to them so openly about it. Don't ever make out like it's an issue, like it's a bad thing that they're going through. You'd be surprised at how much they will understand about what's happening to them. There's so much support out there for parents as well now. So just a Vitiligo Society, for example, they provide literature that parents can take into schools. So,
Okay.
teachers, school classmates can all be educated on it. So it's not like, what's going on and the child's having to face all those questions. There's parent support Facebook groups where other parents can speak to each other who are all in the same position. They can have their kids meet up who all got the condition, and they can, find somebody to talk to about it who they can relate to. So seek out those avenues, seek out that support. There's so much more out there now. Make the most of it.
Well, I mean that's wonderful. It sounds like this is just such a different space to what it used to be,
So
in the
much.
sense of the support and encouragement and acceptance that there is around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I
Um,
said, on just, there's so many support groups on social media, all over the world. And there's so many just in England. So even if you just search vitiligo in one of the search bars on Facebook, on Instagram, you'll find so much information, so much help. And that the community is amazing. The community is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's such a turnaround, isn't it, from
Yeah.
the kind of South Asian community and the comments that you get, and the
Yeah.
support that is available out there now. It's really nice to see. It's so wonderful to see you working on this and growing the way that you are, and living the life that you're living is beautiful, and I think you've done such a good job with it. And I'm genuinely grateful that you are kind of working to promote this and advocate for people with vitiligo. It's really, really nice to see.
Mm.
Um,
Like I said,
and
thank
thank
you
you
very
so
much,
much for
for the
speaking to us.
opportunity.
Yeah, no problem.
It's,
Thank you very much, Sheetal. And we will have to speak again soon and catch up at some point.
yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.